The rancher tried to arrange his son's marriage, but he chose the Apache girl from the stables. The rancher was known across the valley as a hard-working and respected man. He had built his life with his own hands, starting with almost nothing and slowly turning dry land into a strong, successful ranch. Every fence post, every stable wall, and every field carried the marks of his effort. People said he was strict but fair. He believed in discipline, order, and tradition. To him, these were not just ideas, they were rules that kept life from falling apart. For many years, his greatest pride was his son. From the time the boy could walk, the rancher taught him how to ride, how to care for animals, and how to understand the land. The son grew up strong, calm, and thoughtful. He respected his father deeply, even when he didn't always agree with him. The rancher believed his son would one day take over the ranch, marry well, and keep the family name strong for generations. As the son grew older, the rancher began thinking seriously about his future. In his mind, life followed a clear path. A good education, a suitable marriage, children, and then responsibility. Marriage, especially, was not something to leave to chance. The rancher believed love could grow later, but stability had to come first. He had already started talking with another family from a nearby town, people with good standing and similar values. Their daughter was polite, educated, and came from a respected background. To the rancher, she seemed like the perfect choice. He didn't ask his son directly at first. Instead, he spoke about the future during meals, while checking fences or riding together across the land. He talked about responsibility, about how hard life could be without support, and about how important it was to choose wisely. The son listened quietly. He didn't argue, but he didn't speak much either. The rancher took this silence as agreement, not realizing that his son's heart was already somewhere else. Away from the main house, beyond the large fields and near the wooden stables, life moved at a different pace. This was where the horses were kept, and where much of the quiet, unseen work happened. Among the workers was a young Apache girl. She had been working there for some time, helping care for the horses, cleaning stalls, and fixing small things without ever being asked. She arrived early, left late, and rarely complained. She didn't draw attention to herself. She kept her eyes lowered and spoke only when necessary. Some people barely noticed her at all, but the horses noticed. They responded to her calm voice and gentle movements. Even the most restless animals seemed to trust her. She understood them in a way that came from patience, not force. The rancher's son noticed her too. At first, it was nothing more than observation. He saw how carefully she worked, how she treated the animals with respect, and how she stayed focused even when others took breaks. Over time, he found himself slowing his steps when he passed the stables. He began helping more often, not because he was asked, but because he wanted to be there. Their first conversations were short and simple. A question about a horse, a comment about the weather, a quiet thank you. The Apache girl was cautious. She wasn't used to attention from people who lived in the main house. Experience had taught her to keep distance, to avoid misunderstandings. But the son spoke to her like an equal. He didn't rush her, didn't demand answers, and didn't act superior. Slowly, trust began to form. The son learned that she had grown up moving between places, never staying long enough to feel fully settled. Life had not been easy for her, but it had made her strong. She carried herself with quiet dignity. She spoke about her people with respect, about the land with understanding, and about work with pride. The son found himself listening more than talking, something he didn't often do. Days turned into weeks. The ranch continued its routine, but something had changed for the son. He smiled more. He stayed near the stables longer. He began to question things he had once accepted without thought. The Apache girl, meanwhile, tried to keep her feelings guarded. She knew how quickly things could go wrong. She knew the distance between the stables and the main house was more than physical. It was social, cultural, and deeply rooted. The rancher, focused on his plans, didn't notice these changes at first. He was busy discussing arrangements, thinking about dates, and imagining the future. To him, everything was moving forward as it should. He believed his son would understand in time. After all, hadn't he taught him to value duty above all else? But the ranch had many eyes. Workers noticed the son's growing presence near the stables. Some whispered quietly among themselves. Others watched with curiosity. A few shook their heads, knowing how the rancher might react if he found out. The Apache girl sensed this shift too. She felt the weight of attention and became even more reserved. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in warm colors, the rancher saw his son walking back from the stables. There was something different in his expression, thoughtful, conflicted, almost distant. The rancher frowned slightly but said nothing. He told himself he was imagining things. That night, the rancher spoke again about the girl from town, praising her manners and family. His son responded politely but without enthusiasm. The rancher felt a small sense of unease, though he couldn't yet explain why. He went to bed believing things would sort themselves out. Down near the stables, the Apache girl finished her work and sat quietly for a moment before leaving. She looked at the horses, the land, and the fading light. In her heart, she felt both hope and fear. She knew that whatever was beginning could not stay hidden forever. And far away from both of them, the rancher slept peacefully, unaware that the future he was carefully planning was already slipping beyond his control. The next few weeks on the ranch moved forward like any other, yet something unseen was slowly changing the rhythm of daily life. The morning still began early, with the sound of boots on wooden floors and the low calls of cattle across the fields. Dust still rose with the sun, and the land demanded the same steady care it always had. But beneath the routine, emotions were growing, quiet and strong, especially near the stables. The Apache girl continued her work with the same focus as before. She arrived before most people and left after the sun dipped low. Her hands knew the horses well. She brushed them carefully, spoke to them softly, and noticed small changes others missed. A slight limp, a tired eye, a restless movement, nothing escaped her attention. The animals trusted her because she never rushed them and never raised her voice. To her, they were not just animals, they were living beings that deserved patience and respect. The rancher's son found himself drawn there more often. At first he told himself it was just responsibility. Horses were important to the ranch after all, but deep down he knew the truth. He felt calmer near her. The noise of expectations faded when he stood in the quiet space of the stables. With her, he didn't feel like someone's son or a future owner of land. He felt like himself. Their conversations grew longer, though still simple. Sometimes they spoke about work, sometimes about the weather, and sometimes about nothing important at all. Silence was comfortable between them. The Apache girl didn't fill every moment with words, and the son learned to appreciate that. He noticed how carefully she chose what to say, how she listened fully before answering. It made him slow down and think more deeply. One afternoon, while cleaning a stall together, he asked her about her childhood. She paused for a moment before answering. Her voice was steady, but there was a weight behind her words. She spoke of moving from place to place, of learning early not to depend on comfort or promises. She spoke of elders who taught her to respect the land and to work with patience, not anger. She didn't speak of pain directly, but it was clear life had not been easy. The son listened closely. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he thanked her for trusting him with her story. That simple response surprised her. Many people asked questions out of curiosity, but few truly listened. Something shifted in her that day. The wall she had built so carefully showed its first small crack. Still, she remained cautious. She understood the world they lived in. She knew how people talked, how quickly opinions formed, and how easily blame could fall on someone with less power. She didn't want trouble for herself or for him. More than once, she considered keeping her distance again, but each time she tried, the pull between them felt stronger. Meanwhile, the rancher became more serious about his plans. He invited the family from town to visit. Meals were shared, polite conversations filled the house, and expectations grew stronger. The girl he had chosen for his son was kind and well-mannered, and she tried her best to connect. But the son's heart wasn't there. He was respectful but distant. The rancher noticed this and felt a quiet frustration growing inside him. He began to watch his son more closely. He noticed how often he disappeared toward the stables, how his mood changed after returning. At first, the rancher dismissed it as stress or uncertainty. But doubt began to settle in his mind. He had seen this look before, years ago, when he himself had faced a choice between duty and desire. The workers noticed the tension too. Some avoided speaking altogether. Others whispered when they thought no one was listening. A few felt uneasy, sensing that something was coming that would disturb the balance of the ranch. The Apache girl felt these looks and whispers like a cold wind. She began to worry that her presence was causing harm. One evening, after finishing her work, she stayed behind longer than usual. The sun had nearly set, and the sky glowed with soft colors. The son found her sitting quietly near the fence. He asked if she was all right. She hesitated, then told him she felt out of place, that she didn't want to bring trouble to his family or his future. Her words struck him deeply. He realized that while he struggled with expectations, she carried fear. Fear of being blamed, of being pushed away, of losing the small sense of belonging she had found. He told her she mattered, that her work and her presence were important. He didn't make promises he wasn't sure he could keep, but he spoke honestly. That night, neither of them slept well. The next day, the rancher finally heard a clear report from someone he trusted. His son, they said, was spending too much time near the stables. The rancher's face hardened. He felt a mix of anger and disappointment. He had worked too hard, planned too carefully, to allow everything to fall apart because of feelings he believed could be controlled. He decided to say nothing for now. Instead, he watched. The Apache girl felt the change immediately. The rancher's eyes followed her movements when she passed near the main house. His presence felt heavier, more distant. She kept her head down and focused on her work, hoping things would settle on their own. But the son could sense the coming storm. He felt caught between loyalty and truth. He wanted to protect her, but he didn't yet know how. He knew that speaking too soon might make things worse, but staying silent felt like a kind of betrayal. As days passed, the tension tightened like a rope pulled too far. The ranch continued its work, but smiles were fewer, words shorter. The Apache girl began to prepare herself emotionally for what might come. She had learned long ago that when trouble arrived, it was safer to step back than to fight. One late afternoon, the rancher stood alone, looking across the land he had built with his own hands. He told himself he was doing the right thing, yet somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice asked a question he wasn't ready to answer. And down by the stables, the Apache girl brushed the mane of a horse slowly, knowing that whatever peace she had found there might soon be taken away. The change came quietly at first, but everyone on the ranch could feel it. The air felt heavier, like the moment before a storm breaks. The rancher no longer spoke as freely as he used to. His steps were slower, his face more serious, and his eyes sharper. He watched everything now, his son, the workers, and especially the area near the stables. The son felt the pressure every day. He tried to act normal, to do his work as always, but it was becoming harder. He could sense his father's growing suspicion, even though no words had been spoken yet. Meals at the main house became tense. Conversations felt forced. The rancher talked more about responsibility and future plans, repeating the same ideas again and again, as if hoping his son would suddenly agree. But the son's heart was no longer quiet. The more his father pushed, the more he realized how deeply he cared for the Apache girl. It was not just admiration anymore. It was concern, respect, and a strong desire to protect her from the weight of expectations she never asked for. The Apache girl felt the shift too. She noticed how the rancher's eyes followed her, how some workers avoided speaking to her, and how whispers stopped suddenly when she walked by. She had seen this pattern before in other places. When tension rose, people looked for someone to blame. And most of the time, it was someone like her. She began to pull back. She kept her conversations with the son shorter. She finished her work quickly and left without lingering. She told herself it was safer this way. Caring too much had never ended well for her in the past. The son noticed the distance immediately. It hurt more than he expected. One evening, as they worked side by side, he asked her if he had done something wrong. She shook her head but didn't meet his eyes. She said things were becoming difficult and that it might be better if they stayed apart for a while. Her words felt like a sharp blow. He wanted to argue, to say that distance would only make things worse, but he could see the fear behind her calm voice. She wasn't pushing him away because she wanted to. She was doing it to protect herself and him. That night, the son made a decision. He knew avoiding the issue would only allow it to grow. Early the next morning, he went to his father's office. The rancher looked up, surprised by the seriousness in his son's expression. They sat across from each other in silence for a long moment. Finally, the rancher spoke, asking if something was troubling him. The son took a deep breath and answered honestly. He said he respected his father and everything he had built. He said he understood duty and responsibility. But then he spoke about choice, about how a life built only on expectation could become empty. The rancher listened, his jaw tight. When the son mentioned the Apache girl, the room seemed to grow colder. The rancher's face hardened and his voice became firm. He spoke about differences, about how life was already hard enough without making choices that would bring struggle. He said people would talk. He said the ranch's future could be damaged. The son didn't raise his voice. He didn't accuse. He simply said that what mattered most was respect and truth. He said the girl had done nothing wrong. She worked hard, cared for the land, and treated everyone with dignity. He said pushing her away because of fear was not the right path. The rancher stood up abruptly, ending the conversation. He said they would talk later when emotions were calmer, but both of them knew something important had been said, something that could not be taken back. Word spread quickly that the father and son had argued. The workers sensed it and grew even quieter. The Apache girl felt it without hearing a single detail. The son didn't come by the stables that day. She told herself it was for the best, but her chest felt heavy. Later that afternoon, the rancher walked alone through the land. He passed the fields, the fences, the barns, everything he had built over a lifetime. He remembered being young, making choices others didn't understand. He remembered sacrifices and regrets he had never spoken about. But pride was a powerful thing. It whispered that he knew better, that he was protecting his family. That evening, the Apache girl made a choice of her own. She packed her few belongings quietly. She didn't tell anyone. She believed leaving would ease the tension and allow life on the ranch to return to normal. She had learned long ago that sometimes the strongest thing a person could do was walk away. The next morning, her place at the stables was empty. The horses were restless. One refused to be let out. Another paced nervously. The son noticed immediately. He asked around, but no one had answers. When he realized she was gone, his heart sank. He felt a mix of guilt and fear. He wondered if his silence had pushed her to this decision. He went straight to his father. This time, his voice shook, not with anger but with pain. He said she had left, and he believed it was because of the pressure surrounding them. He said losing her felt like losing something important, something honest and real. The rancher said nothing at first. He looked away out the window, toward the stables. For the first time, doubt cracked through his certainty. He had wanted to protect the ranch, his family, and his plans, but now he saw the cost. That night the ranch felt emptier than ever. The son sat alone, wondering if he had waited too long. The rancher lay awake, facing thoughts he had avoided for years. And somewhere beyond the ranch, the Apache girl walked forward without looking back, carrying both relief and sorrow in her heart, unsure if she had made the right choice. What none of them knew yet was that this separation would force truths into the open, truths that could no longer be ignored. The ranch did not feel the same after the Apache girl left. Her absence was felt in quiet ways at first. The stables were clean, but they no longer felt alive. The horses seemed unsettled, shifting in their stalls and responding slowly to others who tried to care for them. Small routines she once handled with ease were now forgotten or done without the same care. Even the workers noticed it, though few spoke openly. The rancher's son struggled the most. Each morning he walked toward the stables out of habit, only to stop halfway, reminded that she was no longer there. He replayed every conversation in his mind, wondering what he could have said or done differently. He blamed himself for not standing up sooner and for believing that things would somehow work out on their own. His father noticed the change in him. The son ate less, spoke little, and worked long hours without rest. The pride the rancher once felt was now mixed with worry. He told himself that time would heal everything, but deep down, he was no longer sure. One afternoon, a small problem with one of the horses turned into a serious situation. The animal refused to eat and grew weak. The usual methods didn't help. The rancher watched as the workers struggled, doing their best but lacking the understanding the Apache girl once showed. It was then that the rancher felt something shift inside him. He realized how much she had contributed, quietly and without recognition. That evening, the rancher sat alone at the kitchen table long after everyone else had gone to bed. He stared at his hands, rough from years of work, and thought about control. He had spent his life believing that if he planned carefully enough, nothing would fall apart. Yet now, the ranch felt fragile in a way it never had before. Memories came back to him, of his own youth, of choices made under pressure, and of paths not taken. He remembered someone he had once cared deeply for, someone he let go because it seemed easier than facing judgment. That decision had shaped his life more than he had ever admitted. The next morning, the rancher did something unexpected. He saddled his horse and rode out alone, asking a few quiet questions along the way. He learned where the Apache girl had gone, how she was living, and what kind of work she had found. None of it was easy, but it was honest. When he finally found her, she was surprised to see him. Her first instinct was to turn away. She believed he had come to ask her to stay gone, but the rancher did not speak with authority or anger. He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. He told her he had seen the ranch change since she left. He told her the horses missed her and that her work had mattered more than he had realized. Most importantly, he admitted that his fear had guided his actions more than wisdom. He did not excuse himself, but he acknowledged his mistakes. The Apache girl listened quietly. Years of disappointment had taught her not to trust apologies easily. She said she never wanted to cause trouble or divide a family. She explained that leaving felt like the only way to protect everyone involved. The rancher nodded. For the first time, he saw her not as someone from the stables, but as a person with strength and dignity. He told her his son cared deeply for her, and that pushing her away had caused pain that could not be ignored. Back at the ranch, the son waited without knowing what would happen. When his father returned, there was a change in him. He looked tired but lighter somehow. He sat with his son and spoke honestly, without commands or expectations. He said he had tried to control the future out of fear. He said that love could not be planned like business or land. He did not promise easy acceptance or a smooth path, but he said he was willing to learn and to listen. For the first time in a long while, father and son spoke as equals. The son shared his feelings openly, his fears and his hopes. He said he didn't want to abandon the ranch or his responsibilities. He only wanted a life built on truth, not silence. Days passed, and slowly the ranch began to breathe again. The horses calmed. The workers sensed the shift and relaxed. Though the Apache girl had not yet returned, her presence was felt in the conversations and changes taking place. The rancher knew the hardest part was still ahead, accepting change not just privately but openly. He knew others would talk. He knew life would not suddenly become simple, but he also knew that holding onto fear would only bring more loss. Somewhere not far away, the Apache girl thought about the ranch, the horses, and the quiet bond she had formed there. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that understanding might be possible. The ranch stood waiting, not as a place of control, but as a place on the edge of transformation. The morning the Apache girl returned to the ranch, the air felt different. It was calm but full, like something important was about to happen. The sun rose slowly over the land, lighting the fields and fences that had stood through many seasons. The ranch looked the same, yet it no longer felt the same. She arrived quietly, just as she always had. There was no announcement, no gathering of people. She walked toward the stables with steady steps, carrying only a small bag. Her heart beat fast, not from fear this time, but from uncertainty. She did not know how she would be received, or if she truly belonged there anymore. The horses noticed her before anyone else did. One lifted its head and let out a soft sound. Another stepped closer to the fence. She paused, resting her hand on the wooden rail, and allowed herself a small smile. In that moment, she felt something familiar return, a sense of calm she had not felt since leaving. The rancher's son saw her from a distance. For a second, he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. Then he ran. He didn't stop to think about what to say or how it might look. When he reached her, he slowed, not wanting to overwhelm her. They stood there facing each other, words caught between relief and emotion. She spoke first. She said she wasn't sure if coming back was the right choice, but she believed in honesty more than fear. He told her he was glad she had returned, not just for him, but because the ranch felt empty without her. There were no big promises, only shared understanding. When the rancher appeared, the moment felt heavy. The Apache girl straightened, ready to leave again if needed. But the rancher did not raise his voice or give orders. He greeted her respectfully. He thanked her for returning and said the ranch had felt the loss of her care and dedication. He didn't ask for forgiveness directly. Instead, he spoke about learning. He said he had spent much of his life believing strength meant control. Now he understood that strength could also mean letting go. He said the ranch had survived storms, droughts, and hard years, and it would survive change too. The workers watched quietly. Some were surprised. Others nodded as if they had been waiting for this moment. The atmosphere softened, like a tight knot slowly loosening. Over the following days, life on the ranch settled into a new rhythm. The Apache girl returned to her work, but she was no longer invisible. People spoke to her more openly. They asked for her opinion. The horses responded quickly, as if relieved to have her back. The rancher made a point of involving his son in decisions, not as a future owner, but as a partner. They worked side by side, rebuilding not just trust but respect. The son took on more responsibility willingly, knowing his voice mattered now. There were still challenges. Not everyone approved. Some visitors looked surprised, others uncomfortable, but the rancher stood firm. He did not argue or explain himself to everyone. He simply lived his choice, believing actions spoke louder than words. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, the three of them stood near the stables, the rancher, his son, and the Apache girl. The land was quiet, peaceful. The rancher spoke about the future, not in terms of plans made alone, but as something they would face together. He said the ranch was more than land and fences. It was a place shaped by the people who cared for it. And those people deserved respect, no matter where they came from. The Apache girl listened, feeling something she had rarely felt before: belonging. Not because she had been chosen, but because she had been accepted. In time, the ranch became known for something new. Not just hard work and tradition, but fairness and understanding. People said the old rancher had changed. He agreed. He said the land taught him that nothing grows without room to breathe. The son looked toward the future with hope, not pressure. He knew life would still be challenging, but it would be honest, and that mattered more than ease. As seasons passed, the ranch thrived, not because it stayed the same, but because it learned to change. And in that change, 3 lives found a stronger, truer path forward together.